But no, I'm good, thanks. But you're friends with Kimball, right? Yeah, so am I.
Awesome. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
I knew there was a
Yeah, I'm
connection.
I'm the clothes and the hat.
Nice hat. Thank you.
So funny.
That's awesome.
He's a cowboy now. How long?
Ah, perfect.
Oh, like since 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From New York?
Yeah. I met the mom first.
All right, I'm a
And I
little
worked with
worried
the
about
mom.
it saying Stillwater. What else
The
would it
mom's
be?
Yeah, in Europe, half the water is bubbly.
That's fair.
Yeah, me too. Me
I
too.
love word.
And May? Oh, you met May too?
I warn you, that is possible.
Did she follow you on Instagram?
I have many friends in Germany who won't buy still water. They only buy bubbly water.
Oh, good. I
It's not
love
worth their
her.
money.
Yeah, she's great.
I'm guessing you were Max.
Yes, I apologize.
Ah, welcome.
Just our newsletter's going out, and Andrew Simpson just died. So
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Which one did you do?
I'm your moderator for that one.
Okay, cool. I went to New York.
Hey, I'm Max, by the way.
Hi, Max. Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
The roll at 9 o'clock when we start. So I'll kind of get confirmation that y'all are ready to go. Then I'm going to roll that video. When it gets to 10 seconds, you'll see me throw up my hand like this. I'll give you a 5 count and I'll point to you once we're the camera's on the room.
Yeah.
And then we
I
can
lived in New Mexico for
Perfect.
2 years.
Any questions?
Not at the moment.
I lived in Albuquerque,
Two
but
quick
I was
questions for you,
working in
Max.
Santa
How do you
Fe, so
pronounce
I'd
your
stay
last
in
name?
Santa Fe
Towey.
like
I was
2 weeks
right.
a week and then go back
2E.
to Albuquerque.
Rare
But
to
this
get
is
that
like
one
the
right.
early 90s.
I'm used to it. And
Totally
what do you want me to say about you?
Um,
Oh, really?
Because I don't like reading the bio. I would like saying what people like.
founder of Roca News. Nonpartisan news company for young people. And 5 million followers across platforms.
It's really beautiful, but I heard it's
Also has a
changed so
personal
much.
TikTok.
Yeah, everything's changed. Even
700K.
Mm-hmm.
And loves news, especially.
Oh, that's good. Santa Fe, they used to make fun of me.
Well,
Well, you know, I wear black, and they'd be like,
Yeah, I
"Oh
don't know.
God, who
We're
are
still
you?"
going through it,
Yeah.
whatever.
Like the first day I got there.
Have you ever
someone was
DJ'd?
Like, who do you think she is?
I've
I was
never
like,
DJ'd.
uh-oh, I'm in trouble here.
I asked one because I have 2 people who have DJ'd, and I, and they
Wow.
DJ'd
Oh, I
together.
should have brought my
that
stuff. I
right?
brought it yesterday. I
Good
forgot.
morning.
DJ?
Yeah, I'm from Berlin.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And same with this guy, he's a musician as well.
Do you know Nicole?
My son is Max, so
Oh,
it
yeah?
happens to be
No.
my
I don't-
absolute
I don't know.
favorite
I said
name.
him last night. I think you
For me,
He was so
from
nice.
Max Bialystock's Zero Mostel's character in The Producers.
So I came out.
My
That's
son,
wonderful.
And
my
then I
son
was
once
like,
introduced
"Oh,
himself.
You don't know me, but I know you because I know
as,
your shirts. And I was like, oh,
my
that's
name is
really
Max
nice.
Bialystock
And then,
Spiro.
yeah, they're really nice.
Which I did not appreciate at some level. Okay, let me put my phone on
What year?
silent because I do not want it ringing in the middle of this. A decent ring today, that's good.
That's really fun.
I told everybody else we're going to be giving you the opportunity
Oh,
for
that's
5-minute, opening statements, and I'm using this wonderful app, which basically will
This is
do
kinda
green for 5,
Yeah.
yellow for 2 minutes, and then red when it
is
gets to
perfect.
45.
Continuing education knows that at the end, students want to graduate. and we can help them do that because we take the time to really listen to their needs and we understand all the different options that are available across the campus for them.
We don't take a cookie cutter approach. We realize each student comes with their own story. So whether it's a part-time student looking to complete a degree program or someone just looking for online courses, we're there to connect them to the resources of the university.
Good morning. My name is David Spiro, or to get a head start on the panel, I sometimes call myself David Spiro TM, because I found everybody always refers to me just as David Spiro. Today is April 11th, 2024. It's 9:00 a.m., and this is panel number 18038, Building Your Brand in Creative Professions. Before we get started, the University of Colorado, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of indigenous people in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. While the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on indigenous people, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with indigenous people and issues locally and globally. We will do this by recognizing and amplifying the voices of indigenous CU students, staff, and faculty in their work, educating, conducting research, supporting student success, and integrating indigenous knowledge, consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support, and to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is inclusive and respectful. And as somebody who's attending classes, they are actually doing that, which I think is wonderful. One other thing I'd like to mention is that we want to be sure to get a chance to ask questions. This is how we'll handle the Q&A. We'll reserve the end of the discussion for that. We're using a note card system to receive questions from the audience. At any time in the session, simply raise your hand, and a note card and pencil will be given to you by our producer. Please write legibly, because I'll be reading them and I want to be able to read them. If you're a student, please note that on your question on the card, because I want to give preference to producers. So what's going to happen is, first I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then each one of them is going to have 5 minutes to sort of talk a little bit about why they're here, or actually anything you want to for those 5 minutes. I can't control you. And then we're going to go on to the question and answers. So a brief introduction of our panelists. Stephanie Tricola is a fashion stylist from New York. She's a contributing editor for many magazines, and you'll understand why I'm saying this in a second, and she has never been a DJ. The reason I mention that is, as we move on to our next person, Hunter Leggitt, interesting person. He's an architect. He is producer of various immersive artworks. He is he does music, and he also was a DJ at the Fox Theater along with Matthew, our next producer. So that's why it's important whether you've been a DJ or not. One of the more interesting things about him I found is that he likes being creative, but also likes doing tangible things, and that shows up in his work a lot. Next, we have Matthew Jones. He is, I told you to write legibly, and I didn't write legibly. He is a musician, runs a recording studio. He does different concerts for nonprofits to help them make profits, and also, as I said, was a co-DJ. I'm giving you brief introductions because you can all read about their, the wonderful details about their lives in the program. And then we have Max Towey, who's founder of Broken News. He has 5 million followers for that right now, 160K on TikTok. Strangely enough, loves news, and also has never been a DJ. By the way, I was
so
not
far.
That's right.
So far.
So far.
I was not a DJ,
time
but I did
that.
do news for a college radio station. So that's my criteria. So And anybody want to go first? Going once, go. All right, Max, you're
All
elected
right.
because you're closest to me.
So first of all, thanks everyone for being here. I was a little late coming to the panel this morning, and it wasn't because I overslept, although maybe a little bit, but because O.J. Simpson just died. So we had to change the newsletter that goes out at 11 a.m. Eastern. And we also had to break one of our rules this morning, which we think news companies rely on the word controversial as filler. It's kind of an easy word to throw in there. You just, controversial. We used it this morning. So quite a headline. And again, thank you everyone for being here. So I suppose a little bit of background on Roca News and maybe to get to the panel discussion today on using social media for business, for your product, for everything else. We are a news company who first sort of took off because we decided, you know what, instead of using social media as a launch pad to websites, to podcasts, to other places, pretty much as an intermediary, we said, okay, most young people don't consume news, and most young people spend their entire days on social media. Maybe we should deliver a quality product to them as opposed to leaving that extra step in there. So our first insight in 2021 was, let's create a product designed for Instagram, the most engaged social media platform for our target demographic, which is 18 to 30-year-olds. And by the way, generally speaking, Roca News' mission is to create nonpartisan news for young people. Young people hate the news. Everybody kind of hates the news now, but especially young people. So that was our mission. And there's so many lessons to glean about the ins and outs and how best to, I think, manage social media, create value for people. But one thing I find very interesting is a lot of people hiring social media managers or talking about their own social media strategies at any business. They'll say, I'll hire a young person because they get social media, because they're on it all the time. And to me, that's like saying, I'll hire my friend who watches movies all day to direct the next feature film. And in reality, consumption does not equal quality creation. In fact, I found that some of the best people on social media either A, don't use it, B, aren't young, and C, are just sort of winging it all the time and just sort of have a laissez-faire attitude. And so I think that's one of the most interesting things. We always say things like the algorithm didn't like my content. They'll say, that one didn't take off because the algorithm didn't like it. But the algorithm is really just a replacement word for what people like. And similarly, I think all of social media is you have to ask the question. Everyone lives in their own little echo chamber in their conference room of, that would be a great content idea, or your friends say that would be great. You have to imagine in the cold, easily distracted eyes of people scrolling their feeds, are you creating value for this person? And that's a question that's been asked for content creators since the printing press guy, Gutenberg, shout out. But seriously, I think that we always bury it in this social media jargon, but the questions are the same. Is it interesting? Does it create value? And is it unique? And that's the question I think across all of what we do, delivering news to young people, we have to answer every single day. Even when you build a following, you've got to stay on top of it. People will leave you in a second. And there's a lot more we want to get into. I don't want to, run on too long with the monologue here. But I think that building a community and remembering that there are people behind the numbers is the single most important thing. Numbers are virtually meaningless when it comes to follower counts, impressions, etc. You can have some people have more successful businesses or brands by having 10,000 followers or subscribers than people who have 10 million. Like if you run a meme account or something that's junk and easily replicable, non-differentiated, non-community building, you can't do a lot with that. If you drop a podcast, nobody's going to listen to it. If you sell merch, nobody's going to buy it. If you host an event, nobody's going to go to it. But if you build a core community, remember there are people behind. I'll end with this, a lesson from Taylor Swift. There's a great article on how she built such an insane cult following. And one of the findings early on in the Fearless days, for any Taylor Swift fans out there, that she would go to people's weddings randomly that would invite her. And it made no sense unit economics. I'm sure her agents were saying, why would you go to someone's wedding? But over time, it built this brand of she really cares about her followers, and nobody's inviting us to our wedding, so that metaphor doesn't totally work. But that same principle of don't be dominated by unit economics and other junk like that. Remember there are people there and create value for them.
Right on the dot.
Right on the dot. I was going for a buzzer beater.
Right on the dot.
That was impressive. Matthew.
Hello, my name is Matthew Jones. I'm a musician, and for the last 10 years I've been very active in the techno community in Berlin, Germany. I've been a musician most of my life, but for the last 10 years it's been the fundamental passion I've been following. I'm founder of Relative Studios, which is a recording studio in Berlin, Germany, and for the last 5 years it's become a hub for the DJ musician community. We offer services, mixing, mastering, also places for DJs to practice before their gigs. I'm also a founder of Rave for Good, which is a non-for-profit organization we've started where we take over clubs. We do parties just like everyone else, but our DJs, our staff, everyone donates their time for free, and we take all the money that normally would go in someone's greedy pocket and we give it to good causes. We've dug a well in Africa for a village that had to travel 4 hours just for drinking water, and we've donated to a lot of other humanitarian causes. As far as building your brand, there's many different ways to go about this. We could talk about as a musician, we could talk about as a non-for-profit, or we could also talk about as a business. But from my experience when it comes to all three of these, and you kind of hit on this at the end, is new age is social media. Everyone's saying social media, social media, social media, and I can't tell you how many people have told me as a musician, get your social media in track, get it, get it, get it. But I have to say 98% of every gig or opportunity I have gotten has come from in-person interaction. You can say you have 1 million followers, but if I book you to play at my party and you have 1 million followers, but there's only 2 people on that dance floor, I'm sorry, your numbers don't mean anything to me. Through human interaction is when you get the real connection, which as an artist is what we're really after. The people who I have who support my music, they support it 100%, and they don't support it online. They support it in the moments when it matters, when I'm playing it live. As far as a non-for-profit, this gets a little tricky. You have to figure out, for us, we had to figure out what do we represent and what exactly is our mission. Through much conversation, we narrowed it down to humanitarian issues. But through having parties that people identify, we've created this huge community of people that always come to our parties because they love to party regardless, but this is the one time every 6 months that they get to do it selflessly. So they come and they're passionate. So you want to build your image, find a way to identify and connect with your audience, if you will. Because without them, you're just an artist alone in a room. And as fun as that is, and that's when the magic happens, that's when you create, but when you share your art is really where the magic is. Let me see what else here. Knowing what your content is. So as a techno DJ, my content is the sets I've recorded and the tracks I'm making. So if I want to get this heard, I have to identify exactly who is my listeners. Who am I going after? And of course, Facebook has all these algorithms and whatnot of how you can market and advertise your stuff. But really identifying the physical locations of where you can meet people that have similar interests in what you're doing is the most powerful. Because when you're with a group of people that their mind is on the same track, they support each other and they keep moving forward, where as an individual, it's much, much harder. Let me see here. I guess as a business, how do you define your image? As a music studio, this is a little tough because we are in a neighborhood, we're surrounded by people living. So at the beginning, we didn't want to get in trouble. We were loud in the basement, we have all these loud music, and we were kind of afraid to make our brand. And now we've been there for 5 years, and we're at the point where we feel comfortable in our space. So we've started advertising to people outside of our community, and this has actually grown the business in a very significant way. But as far as that, it's identifying who are our clients. Our clients are DJs, people that need room to practice, or musicians that need help. So how do you find these people? The same thing, in person. 98% of my clients come from people I meet out at my gigs or out at other people's gigs, and we talk, not through social media. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Hunter Leggitt. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a CU grad. I graduated architecture in 2003 here, and it's really fun to be back here and just speak at CWA. I am the founder of 2 creative companies, my brand Hunter Leggitt Studio and a newer brand House of Fable. I grew up in Denver, moved to Los Angeles after school to kind of cut my teeth and kind of hustle the creative professions and explore what my passions were. And I came back to Colorado about 8 years ago, and I've been pleasantly surprised at the creative community and the support that we have here in Colorado. We don't need to be on the coast to produce epic experiences and have donors and patrons for that. So building a brand is a really interesting reflection for me because I've never really had a prescriptive approach to it. One of the things I can say is that I didn't learn anything about this in school. I kind of had to navigate it on my own in the profession through a lot of kind of successes and failures, and glean whatever growth I could through the process. And it still is an evolving state. What I kind of rewind to is how I got started, and what my brands reflect are my personal passions, my reputation, and my pursuit of multidisciplinary dynamic creativity. That's a tough thing to define, and it's been an interesting thing for me to navigate because my passions have taken me in a lot of different directions. As a kid, I look back and I had a lot of hobbies. I did art, painter, sculptor, I skateboarded. I built a lot of skateboard ramps and forts and different structures. I also was a musician, and one of the personal enjoyments that I found early in life were producing events. I started throwing parties, and I started playing the parties, and that brought community together, and that was my kind of first engagement in what the value of community is in building your own reputation and brand, to create experiences for others and then to grow through that. So I started school up here as a fine artist and quickly determined that a tangible approach was more of my liking, so I transitioned into architecture. And post-college, I started my career in design-build architecture, working for companies and then small boutique design-build developers. Around the last recession, I decided to take a leap of faith and start my own business on my own. I had support from mentors. They said I was ready. The economy was absolute dump, and it was not a good time to start an architecture firm. So that's when I discovered that the artistic passions and the music and the communal experience that I'd grown up and I'd really had as part of my creative passion was drawing, and I transitioned into production design and launched my first company, Hunter Leggitt Studio, as really a portfolio brand of what I did and what I was creatively passionate about, which was architecture, design, build, production design and art, and music. And it was loosely defined, and to be honest, starting a business on your own during a recession as a one-man show was challenging, because it was like, do you buy ads? do you do SEO? Do you build a social following? And even now, 15 years later, I think I have 3,000 followers on Instagram, and I think similar to Matthew, and this is why I'm interested on this panel, like I've taken a different approach. My connection is more organic with my community, and almost every single opportunity that I've created is either through a direct connection, a referral, or a collaboration. And I'll talk more on that a little bit later, but really I think the brand is, how, to me, the focus has been, how do I express my passions, communicate that clearly to the community around, which could be clients, it could be supporters, it could be donors, and then how do I keep a stellar reputation that reflects my passions, but also reflects my discipline and approach to creativity in producing very complex and dynamic structures. I'll just end, because I'm not really explaining, we don't have slides. I do big art. My last project was one of the largest productions on Playa at Burning Man. We did a large sculpture and 1,000 drone show telling the story of an ancient mystery cult from Greece that did psychedelics. So.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Tricola. I'm from New York. I've been in New York almost all of my life. For a little bit, I lived outside of the state, but I'm born and bred New Yorker. I'm a fashion stylist, and I basically contribute to helping other people convey their brand's message more so than conveying my own, but organically, I think that I've created my own little brand as well, and a lot of it's based off of my reputation. I work with magazines, I work with brands, I help create visuals, both in print media and video, and I collaborate between the brands and the public by dressing and outfitting everyone involved in conveying the brand's message. So with that, I've built my own reputation, so when people call upon me, they know that they can rely on me to get their message conveyed. I was never a DJ, as they said before, but I was for a small time a gallerist in New York City while I was trying, I worked in fashion for a really long time, and I built myself up to a big title. I was a director of the United States for a French brand. When I went out on my own and decided to be a stylist, I knew a lot of artists, so I threw a lot of good parties. I met a lot of people. I knew a lot of people through fashion and retail. I knew a lot of people through art, so the people that I knew through fashion and retail used to come to my art parties. So I was organically creating a brand that I was in the know, and I knew where to go, and I knew how to dress and dress other people like that. So I created a following. From that following, individuals would ask me to help create their own identity and their brand through their clothes. So I've worked with a lot of powerful people, and through my reputation, I help the other people convey their messages. So I just organically get jobs. I would say like my Instagram following is only about, I'm not really sure, it's somewhere under 10,000 followers. But my following is pretty powerful. Like the people that follow me are actually more important than having massive numbers. So I'm the same, like I'm more of a word of mouth. I'm out there all the time. I'm meeting people. I'm working on different projects, and I just have organically grown my own brand. I didn't realize that I grew my own brand until I started researching about what brand development is, but my reputation is like probably 90% of how I work and get jobs and deal with people. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. So one of the things that I noticed, all of you talked about the importance of community and of human interaction, and that was more important to you than social. I'm curious, given that all of you are using, I assume, social media to communicate to people, how do you communicate in this one environment to say, no, interaction is the most important part? Because I also heard all of you, talk about you may like your numbers, but you're more interested in passion. So how do you communicate your brand in a medium that isn't necessarily who you want to attract? Do you want to attract passionate people instead? I throw that out to anyone to start with.
I think social media can be used as a tool very easily. Say, for example, I have a gig. I put it on social media, but I'm really in the background messaging my friends. I'm reaching out to them individually and seeing if they're free. And I think that's the best way to go about it. It's a great way to share the news, but if you actually want to, if you want to connect, you maybe got to go a little deeper than posting.
I'm the same. If I have new work, I put my new work up on my Instagram, but at the same time, I'm sending out a newsletter to everybody on my mailing list, letting them know about my work. So I'm not only posting it on social media, but I'm also putting it out through email. And then I cross brand, because then the brand also puts it out, or the celebrity puts it out, and then through their social media, I get more followers, I get more engagement, and I get more jobs.
I think that we obviously all have different goals, and anyone in the audience who's building a brand for your business, any aspiring influencers in the building, we all have different goals. And I think that for a news company in particular, we are, by having a following itself, you're delivering news to people every day. So the platform is not as much a thoroughfare as it is it's in a service in a way. So we have a lot to learn, I think, from the other panelists on stage in terms of actually building that in-person community. That's one of our biggest priorities, because we've seen in the news industry stars rise and fall in terms of people who catch viral traction on social media, whether that's BuzzFeed, Vice, Vox, all the digital media brands that took off. They mastered social media for a bunch of cheap impressions. They monetized via advertising. And guess what? Not a lot of people are wearing Vox hoodies today. Vice is different. Vice was a mismanagement problem, issue for another day. It used to be more valuable than the New York Times, but their founders were crazy and took out a ton of secondary and made a bunch of bad decisions and sold it off to PE. So they had a bunch of bad decisions. But I think all that's to say, when you learn the lessons of news over the last 20 years, it's who really loves what you do. And we've been able to achieve, especially on TikTok and YouTube, a lot of that 5 million number is on TikTok and YouTube, and they're not that valuable. I mean, we've grown organically, cheaply, but again, these people are not diehards, and there's little value there, and we're also creating little value to them. So on Instagram, we focus a lot more on being active in the comments, replying to DMs, and we do a lot of trips. We always try to meet people in our audience. But I think in our next phase, and taking inspiration from a lot of the people here, the other panelists, is we want to throw live debates and live events. And so I think specifically on how you use your social following to facilitate that. You obviously use it as a tool, promoting it. And then I also think staying in people's lives is important. People have the shortest attention spans. If you're inactive for 6 months, you're gone to them. So I think it's also, saying, hey, we're still here every day.
Yeah, we are a diverse selection here, and my passions, I think, in the product that I produce is experiential art, and that the format of that's architecture through large stages, big, physical art, technological, integration, and performances. And one of the way that I've created value is to impact people, and the final product is just one part of the story, and really kind of talking about the story. The experience is through a storytelling connection, and you connect with the audience. And I can take very nice photographs of the final product, but that only shows a portion of it. So what I've found, what's been really, I think, exciting to delve into, and what's connected with my audience, is sharing the process. And the process is the story, the creation of the artworks, the creation of the experiences, whether it's, a 5-year process of building a custom house through the design and the construction and then the launch party that we throw, or through the 1-month blitz of building a large piece of art at Burning Man in the middle of the desert, navigating mudstorms. And it's not necessarily the final product that's resonating. It's the whole story. It's the people behind it. It's the teams behind it. And that's what I've tried to really convey to my audiences is it's not just me, and it's a massive team. It's a massive production. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of challenges, and they can relate to that.
I'm a one-man team, sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the scope of my job. But for me, your experience is dealing with me and how I convey myself and how I come in and make you look and feel, or how I make the brand represent themselves through the people I'm dressing and make them look and feel great and make them look the way the brand wants to convey their message. So for me, it's dealing with me or dealing with the people that that work for me, and making sure like your experience with me is a great experience. If I get you in the room and I put you in horrible clothes, right away, I've not done my job. If I get you in the room and I put you in something and you walk out and you feel like $1 million, then you know, my job is almost done. But then I have to follow through. I have to handle your money correctly. I have to post your images correctly. I have to do a bunch of other stuff to follow up on after dressing you, and I have to make that whole process seamless and painless for you. And then through that, you know that you can trust me to do further jobs. So I'm a smaller production, and everyone who works for me has to represent, you know, the way I work and the way I do things. So my name and myself is very important.
I want to do a follow-up on that, because that's an interesting point. I'm assuming the rest of you panelists also have teams that you're working with. And how do you make sure that the people working for you are representing, you know, your brand? Because ultimately all of you are, you know, the heads of your organizations. How do you make sure that your brand is maintained when you're not there?
Painfully training them.
Emphasis on the word painfully.
No, you know, spending a lot of time with them, really making sure they know how I operate, knowing, you know, what my visual preferences are, how I deal with people. You know, I see a lot of the younger people that I work with, you know, I see them learning how to communicate with the client. Communicating with the client is like, you know, a lot of the job. So I see them, they come in and I watch them grow, and then when I think they're ready, I will send them out to represent me. And I try very, 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 very hard to keep the same people working for me, because it's very valuable to have very good employees rather than like half-assed ones, you know, that mess things up for you and then ruin your reputation, and you know, they don't really convey your message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, our brand is so fragile where trust is the most important thing in the news space. So if you hire a writer who does not align with your values, who is not able to strike the nonpartisan tone that's attracted such a politically diverse audience to Roca, if they don't meet those standards, you're in trouble. So this is a critical issue for us. Now, I have two co-founders, and we will always keep some editorial control. So I think for us, there's also putting up parameters in a smart way for your team. And especially when it's your entire value of your enterprise is at stake, it would be smart to put up those bumpers in the bowling alley. So we do that, but we also, for example, we've hired a couple writers, and I found that curiosity is the single most important trait for what we do. So one of the interview questions I did, and now I do this for anyone who's going to be near content. Other people might be, you know, we have a team of 11. It's not like 400, but we have a couple engineers, we have people, and I prefer to keep it smaller and, you know, pay better, and just instead of spreading it out with the people you don't really know. Like, everyone should really matter on the team, in my opinion. But had the writers always give them 5 controversial issues and then argue each side of them. Now, they're not all super intense and culture war-y, a couple were, but it'd also be like soda tax and whatever. And the key trait I'm looking for is, first of all, you know, knowledge and curiosity. I think curious people are able to kind of understand both sides pretty well. But also, can they argue dispassionately? Can they argue each side and you don't know which side they really stand for? And so I say that because that test is essentially what we have to do every day. There are emotions in the news cycle. Some figures annoy you, some figures you love, some issues are your sort of pet topics that you want to integrate and sprinkle in at all times. And for us, we think less culture war is better. A lot of it's manufactured. It's led to a lot of the polarization and partisanship we have today. And so finding people who are really, really curious and happy, and they themselves reflect the brand you want. So for us, it's curiosity and being as unbiased as possible. So finding people who meet that.
Yeah, this is a great question, David. The protection of your brand and, with large collaborative teams is something I've dealt with since day one and had, a lot of growth, a lot of challenges within it. It's one thing if you're developing, say, a product. Say you're developing a medicine or some sort of widget, and you have a patent on it, and you have, all of the teams, all of the collaborators, all of the technicians, engineers that you bring in are hired under a non-compete, an NDA, very strict legal contracts, so on and so forth, or they're white labeled. You may hire on a company that's an expert in something and you white label them, i.e. they can never promote it as their own product or as a collaborator. As a creative, that's not necessarily or generally how we work. And often, I'm collaborating with very, very experienced, high-profile engineers, other artists, creators, producers, you name it. And often it's like sometimes we forget to even talk about what this arrangement is when we start the project because we're so excited about it. And, but someone originated it and someone kind of founded the idea or the project or got the contract or whatever. And one of the things I've had to work with and, am encouraged that I'm working more towards this is really controlling and protecting those relationships and those situations, because I've found that you can start an incredible creative project and then it can end terribly because a lot of creatives were involved and people think it's their own. And they're one brand and everyone's saying it's ours, it's mine, I did this. And it's confusing. So I think there's kind of an offering, an encouragement as a creative to think about that up front and to protect your brand and to just think many steps ahead of what do you need out of that project, those collaborations, those partnerships, and make sure you think about that up front because it will bite you in the ass if you don't.
Kind of going off that, I would say that as an artist, if there's one thing I've learned is collaboration makes better art. I make music alone, but when I make music with someone else, it's always something I could never do alone. It's more magical, it opens a new experience. So assuming that as an artist you need to work with other people here and there, the question is, how do you? Because people are different. We all have different mindsets. You don't even get along with your best friend all the time, if you know what I mean. So how do you keep working with someone in an artistic way and leave everything else at the door? And the answer to that is trust. If you're working with someone, you have to trust them. You have to trust them just as much as you trust yourself. Otherwise, the balance eventually is gonna not work. It's not gonna work. And I've seen this through our charity. We started maybe 6-7 years ago as a group of 4 or 5 of us. And now we have 2 of the original members still in there. And the question is, how do you continue moving forward when people's lives are going in different directions and people start to have different beliefs of what this project is or whatnot? And of course you have your beliefs. This is what I think it should be, but maybe that he thinks it should be something else. So the question is, how do you communicate? You need to communicate with the people you're with. If you can't communicate with them, stop working with them, because you need to communicate to move forward. So in a group setting, communicate and be selfless. It's okay to be wrong. If people have different beliefs, sometimes go with their belief, because you wouldn't believe what happens.
That was great, thank you. I have a question from a student, which I'm very excited about because it's something I believe in as well. The question was, what lessons have you learned from failures while building your brand? And I'm going to add sort of a corollary to that, which is, of course, our brands want to be ones where we talk about, how successful we are, but do you ever also mention your failures to be able to, talk about your learning experiences?
If I may, I think you learn a lot more from your failures than you ever do from your successes. It hurts, it sucks when you fail, but a true artist gets up and puts their clothes back on and gets back to work, because through failing is how you succeed. So you learn so much from failure.
I have found that the most helpful advice is the tritest when it comes to media and social media. Things like, get a little bit better every day. It's like, okay, thanks for the fortune cookie wisdom. But in reality, That's the entirety of the project. That's the only way to do it. It's like, I always love the fact that the top 10 NFL players, only one was a 4 or 5 star coming out of high school. Everyone was under the radar. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, the Watt brothers, they just had to get a little bit better. And that is just, so one of our big failures early on, we launched in August 2020, a couple months before that election. And in the first 5 months, we did what's instinctive to all of us. Even though we hated the news media and we wanted to be different, we imitated. We basically copied and pasted what every other news company does. We had a website, we had a podcast, we had a YouTube channel, we hired a small staff of writers, some college writers. We did the usual shebang. And sure, we changed our content a little bit. We thought our recipe was a little bit better, but by and large, we imitated because that's the instinct for everyone. And what we learned was you cannot obviously differentiate if you're imitating or create lasting value of any sort. And so the first big lesson I learned was first principles. So philosophical traces to Plato, but a lot of great entrepreneurs talk about where, as opposed to if anyone started a car company or energy drink company, you'd be like, okay, I got to do Red Bull but X, like tweak what's already existing, what you know. Same with cars. Instead, start from scratch. Forget everything you know about news is what we did. And that's the first time we ever created value. Once we forgot everything we knew and started from scratch and really got to know our target audience member and say, what do they want? And be brutally honest about that. I think one of the biggest failures people make is they're not brutally honest about who's on the other side of the phone screen or who's in the audience, and you have to be brutally honest. Otherwise, you'll have a nice pat on the back your whole life and go out of business or not have traction. So, long story short, I think that failures and a willingness to embarrass yourself, especially in the early days, and I mean be utterly embarrassed, where your friends are, they're like, oh, that's a nice video, cringe, and just be willing to suffer through that. It's the only way. If you find another way, please email. I'm serious, please email. I just don't think there's another way.
I would say don't burn your bridges. When I first started out and I was young, I burnt a lot of bridges. I was very cocky, and I would tell older people what I thought of them. And maybe I just would quit the job, while I was there. So I had a lot of learning to do. I had a lot of checking my ego and really realizing that what my parents told me is correct, that older people with more experience know more than I do. And those people have swam around my life since I started. So all the people that I've burnt bridges with, I still see to this day. Fortunately for me, they understood that I was young and that I made some mistakes, and they took it as a further opportunity to school me more. And I really appreciate that. And I try to play that forward. I try to now be a role model for the younger people that work with me, and I try to show them, and I tell them all the time, and I tell my kids all the time, you never know who you're going to meet. I've met people 25 years ago that were moderately successful, and I worked for them, and they really like me, and they have taken off by leaps and bounds, and they have taken me with them. So the relationships that you build and the reputation that you build will only help you build your brand, and be nice to people.
I can second don't burn bridges. That's so important. That reputation is paramount, especially as a creative. I have two aspects of this. One is I've had a lot of failures, some resulting in some pretty intense physical injuries on productions, and others resulting in ends of partnerships and friendships. And I think this is natural in business. This is natural in the creative story, in any small business. And I think what I've learned through it all is you have to keep up, and you have to learn from it, pick yourself up, and keep going. And you have to be committed to the process, and you have to have a good attitude about it. Nothing works if you're moopy and just complaining. And I think to be able to learn and grow from each experience is very important. The other aspect of it is with large team projects, which I think most of ours are, we at the end of each project we do what's called a post-mortem, and it's after the dust is cleared and we're rested back in kind of like a a composed state, because often we're exhausted and emotions are running high and patience is running low, so let that clear. We all sit down.
Psychedelics probably contribute.
Yeah. Psychedelics, yes. We'll have a sit down with all of the stakeholders and just get feedback. And as a producer, that's so important for me to hear, because if this is a long game, and if someone's not happy, or if I did something that needs improvement, I need to hear that, and I need to be receptive and humble about that, because again, these teams are so valuable to what we do, and if they're not happy and working efficiently, then I can't do what I creatively want to do.
Yeah, kind of going off the burning bridges thing.
Are you pro or anti burning bridges?
No, let's burn them all. Yes, don't burn the bridges, but also have self-respect. If someone you're working with is not treating you as an equal, you need to say something, and you need to deal with that problem. Because if you put it under the rug and you keep working with this person for years, eventually it's going to get to a point where you have to burn that bridge, and that can be painful. So dealing with the problem when it starts would be my best advice. Not letting it. Sometimes it's easier just to ignore things. We have this little disagreement. No, talk about it in the creative process and move forward.
Yeah, being a good communicator is key.
Communication.
Yeah.
Can't say it enough.
Definitely a theme that I see here is communication. Here's another great question from a student. What would you say are some of the first steps to building your brand?
Figuring out what your brand is.
Yeah, and what you do. When I first started, people would say, "Oh, can you do the props? Can you do the casting?" And I was like, "Yes, I can do everything." And the best thing that I did was finally focus and stay in my own lane, and just do what I'm best at. And I definitely thrived once I stopped trying to do everything and please everybody, and focus more on myself and what I do.
I think that Quentin Tarantino, Rick Rubin, I was recently watching interviews involving them, and they both said, Quentin Tarantino says, "I make my movies for me." Rick Rubin says, I made my music for me. And heard that from a lot of artists over the years. And at first it sounds really selfish. And it's like, I thought these people were happy. They liked audiences. Do they really make their movies for them? Would they be content with empty theaters, all that? But I think whether it's me or maybe your friends, I've also heard a lot of people say, who are in comedy, they'll say, I just want to make my friends laugh. That's it. But I think having that real personal level where everyone acts like they're broadcasting to this anonymous audience, in reality, it's a bunch of individual people. So keeping it personal and creating value for them. So I think the first step when you're starting building out your brand is, once again, kind of enjoying the content. It has a bunch of benefits. One is sustainability. You've seen people burn out with bad bits. I've done it. One reason I talk a lot about cheap growth and cheap follows is we've had that. We've caught fire with a bunch of bits or series or videos or individual stories on different social media platforms. They give you big followings on paper, but it's not a real audience, and it's also not something you may love. It may be tacky, a touch clickbaity, not stories you're interested in, very recycled. So all these things where it's just like, not only will it limit your shelf life as a creator, which is important. Out of the gate, you might just be, hey, I'd be happy with views. And you may say that now, but remember, it simply will not work long term if you have that horizon. So I think having a long-term horizon where you like what you do, and it's also critical because if you genuinely are proud of it, other people are more likely to like it. So I think, again, being brutally honest, strip away all the knowledge about algorithms. I'll tell you what, I've been able to meet, some people who are high levels of social media, and none of them, first of all, really use it, which is, I find fascinating. So all the little rules, I guess like drug dealers who don't do their own drugs, but so all the rules don't really matter. Those are like minor tweaks. Focus on the big picture and get out there. Be sloppy, tumble down that hill early on. It's the hardest part is jumping into the pool. And I swear once you're there, you'll learn a lot. And so I would say, everyone wants to, sort of freeze at the start line and blueprint everything and battle test it. Do it in the open. Figure it out.
I think you should always support your friends. Support your friends. If they have something, be there. Be there. Always be there. Because if you can't rely on your friends to support you, how can you even start to build a brand? Be there for your friends. Support the people around you, and I think that it will help propel your brand in a way that you can't imagine.
Yeah, I think what Stephanie said about like identifying what your kind of path is. I don't know if I've identified my path, and I think that's it's a challenge, you know. And I think there is still a search of what that path is, and I'm looking for that you know, light bulb to come on. But I think through that process, and actually even saying that, starting a brand that was just my name was because I didn't really want to do some sort of abstract brand name. My brand was what I do, and I do a lot of different things. I'm a builder, I'm a fabricator, I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm a DJ. And almost 15 years later, going through the struggles of like, what is the identity of my brand? And I can finally say it is creating experiences that connect with an audience. And it's through a lot of mediums. It's with a lot of tools. It's been challenging because I'm not just getting hired to do art, or I'm not just producing architecture, and I'm not just DJing parties. I'm kind of doing all of the above, kind of a jack of all trades.
But you're putting them together to make
I'm finally putting them together, and I think it's through kind of being dedicated and pursuing each of those paths that I'm now able to really kind of assimilate all of them and create value through the collection of all of these traits rather than an individual trait. Now, is that the best advice I have to give? I don't think so, but I think it's what are your passions? What are you excited about? What's going to keep you waking up in the morning excited when everything is difficult and sucks and you're out of money and stuff? But you know that like if you keep pushing that boulder, it's going to work out. So what's going to get you excited about that?
So one of the things that I heard that I want to share with everybody, in case you didn't catch it as much, is your brand evolves. So start out with who you are, and then pay attention, and don't allow yourself to be trapped by your initial thoughts. Is that a fair assessment?
Sure.
Okay. You don't have to agree with me just because I'm the
I agree.
moderator.
You don't take on projects that you don't think represent what you do, because then you probably won't excel at that. I work with people who I can communicate well with. If I can't communicate well with you, we're not going to have a good relationship. If you tell me you want to look more masculine, and then I get there and you ask me where the red pleather catsuit is, it's not going to be a good relationship, because you're going to set me up for failure. So I'm not going to keep coming back for that.
Yeah, I think kind of going off that, in the beginning, you want to take every opportunity you get when you're growing your brand, but
it's not always good for you.
It's not always good for you. I mean,
it's
experience is good, but yeah, it can be detrimental at times too. So be really careful on the projects you take on.
I think evolve without sacrificing your identity or guiding light, because those are more pivotal. So I think what evolution looks like, I don't think you change your mission statement. Oh, today I'm an artist. Tomorrow it's where you like spin the wheel on what your purpose is on social media. But I think obviously how that manifests, how you bring it to life, the different strategies you use, that'll absolutely evolve. But I will never, I think audiences, even if they're tiny to start, they notice persistence and courage. And it takes a while to get to know people on social media. So people will admire your persistence. And again, that's another trite thing of just, you've got to show the Woody Allen 80% of success showing up. I mean, that's really, 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 really true on social media.
Wait, I want to say one more thing. You said manifest. That's my new motto.
Ooh.
I manifest. I've changed the way I think. I think positively. I go into situations that I'm going to nail them, and I'm so much more successful. And it's taken me almost all of my career to get to that point, and positive thinking, and because then you convey positivity too when you go into the situation.
Do you have a ritual where you manifest?
No, I mean, I'm not that
Yeah.
But I get a project, I just make sure I know, the ins and outs of it.
Yeah.
I make sure I'm really prepared. I do the best that I can, and then I show up and I'm just like, okay, today's gonna be a good day. I'm gonna nail this. I'm gonna make people feel good, and it's been working really, really well, really well.
So I love that. No,
And I don't like to be around anyone. If I hire someone and they come in and they are like not positive and they're not like conveying that
worst.
message, then I'm not going to be around them anymore.
So I like that. Know who you are, know who you're not.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question that came up. Do you see AI impacting your brand?
That's a great one. Do you want to kick it off?
It's gonna infect. All of us will
Yes.
experience AI, I'm sure. But I think at the end of the day, it's a tool. Just like social media, it's something that we can use to help our brand, but it will not define my brand, that's for sure.
Yeah, 3 years every tech bro said AI would be the future of news and would solve the issues of human bias. Oh, that's a human problem. And then the launches of OpenAI or Microsoft's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Elon Musk's Grok, they proved that they're not going to solve that problem anytime soon. I mean,
Not yet.
Not yet, but even LLMs, I mean, they're simply the language models, the inputs are still human. So as long as you're slicing and dicing human inputs and information, and maybe they'll have tools on trustworthiness scores, but there are always humans underlying the ethical guidelines and ideological guidelines of different AIs. And so I don't think it'll ever go away. Now, could they make things quicker? Sure. But I don't think they'll solve the trust issue, which is what we have. And I also think, frankly, humans want to deal with humans. They do. I really believe that. I don't think people like this sort of, Wizard of Oz spits out information thing. They want to have a human brand. And AI will change. I also buy the argument that we have no clue beyond a five-year time horizon. We have no clue. None. So I think in the next 5 years, though, it's going to be good at aggregating, curating news, some chopping, but it's not going to solve any of the core issues that we're here to solve.
Okay, so I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and when I started working in my industry, everyone shot film, right? So I was there while all the photographers shot film. And slowly, one by one, because they didn't learn the new technology of digital cameras, none of them are working, basically. I remember when I started working and I was a young person and my boss came out to me and she was like, "Oh, can you make me one of those cute Excel spreadsheets?" And I was like, "Oh, this lady can't do that. I can do that." Note to self, like, never outgrow the new tools and new technologies. You have to learn everything. I don't care if when I'm 60, I'm going to try to learn AI, and I tried to learn Instagram. Whatever comes my way, I'm going to try to use that tool and incorporate it into what I'm doing and figure out how I have to live with this new technology and make it work for me. And a lot of people that I've worked with now are not working anymore because they didn't do that. They didn't change and they didn't evolve their business. My business is a lot different, the way I handle it and the way I go about it from when I started. I have these new, beautiful tools that I never had starting out. Makes everything faster and easier for me to do, and I'm going to try to embrace it and see how I can use it to keep me thriving as an artist.
AI seems like the topic of this conference, and I've been to a couple panels about it, and I've gleaned some interesting, just kind of different inputs on it. I have a lot of creative colleagues that are shaking in their seats right now. I think they're terrified. One of my friends who's an FPV drone pilot shooting commercials, he's pretty much writing his exit strategy because of Sora that just came out with video AI. But I agree. I think this is an opportunity right now to adjust and grow and learn and be malleable. And as a creative professional, that's what we're good at. We're good at adjusting. We're good at growing. So I do have faith that we will make it through this. As a artist that works in the tactical space, I'm just doubling down on the value of in-person human experience, and I don't think AI is going to disrupt that. I think it's used as a tool, it can actually aid that and provide efficiencies in exploring new types of ways of connecting with people, an audience, and with kind of the creative and human soul. So
if I may, going off of that, it's a tool. That's the way I think we need to view it. But at the end of the day, can a machine make a creative decision? Isn't creativity the most human thing that we know? Isn't that what makes us human? Our creativity, our ability to make a decision not purely based on logic. I think this AI is making decisions based off logic, which is why if you hear music that's created by AI, yeah, it sounds a lot like music we're making, but there's no human inside it. And what is art without that? So yeah, use it, get on the bus, but don't be defined by it.
Humans will always find other things to do. So we'll be okay.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think to Stephanie's point, I think using the AI tools is pivotal. For example, for us, video editing, photo editing, even some editing tools. There are a lot of tools that AI will do faster than humans. Sorry, humans, you lost. AI will win in a number of areas. But I think in terms of the core news problems, and so we're launching a podcast. Right now we mostly exist on app, newsletter, across our social media. And the point of the podcast is to investigate serious, major, long-term issues that don't reflect in daily news but are just fascinating issues. So one of them's AI. We've been recording a bunch of episodes and are just starting to release them this week. So we went up to Harvard, interviewed their top AI guy, and I remember asking him, do you think AI could create Breaking Bad or Sopranos or The Wire, or whatever your show is? And he said, no, but it'll create a bunch of spin-offs where it'll do the Jesse Pinkman and basically take what Breaking Bad's already given you and create a bunch of universes. And he also argued that we have no clue what's going to happen after 10 years. It's so hard to forecast this technology. The godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, he had no clue where AI would be 10 years ago. If you read the quotes of the smartest people in AI, Sam Altman, they had no clue. Elon Musk said he was blindsided. So you look like, I think we should all, hands in the air and just have like a positive mentality, as everyone said. But I also think we should, with optimism, realize that a lot of these problems will remain unsolved, in my opinion. I think I firmly believe that. And I think there are people who are going on either extreme where AI is going to change everything, it's going to ruin us, and then other people who are kind of shrugging it off as an industrial revolution or advent of the internet. And I think it's probably somewhere in between, as truth often is. I read that somewhere.
I think if you look, I'll touch really quickly. There's a process in creating a brand. There's structure. There's developing copy for a website. How you want to formulate legal agreements, certain things. I think AI right now is capable, as is, of getting a lot of those starting processes, which we will have to eventually learn as a nascent business and it's creating a brand. It can give you a framework of what to look out for. Which I think is helpful. Now, should you just use that as the result? No. I think, but can it give you kind of a guide of, what steps you need to take and help you in that sense? And I think we can apply that to, a lot of the common processes in life right now. So I think that's a great tool for that, but not to rely upon, just as a guide.
Totally. I'm going to jump in here because we have about 5 minutes left, and I've got a question that I'd love all of you to briefly answer. And that is, as a society, we're taught not to brag, to assume, we're really taught as a society to say, oh, we're no better than anyone else, which doesn't work well as a personal brand. So someone had brought up the idea, how do you do a self-inventory to start off saying, here's the basis of my brand?
Well, I think we all are the same. We all are owed the same amount of respect. So you should, when I look at, say I'm booking this party and I need to select which of these brands, which of these DJs I want to put on this floor. If someone is really too self-absorbed, that's a big turnoff for us. I want someone who's going to work well with the team, who's not only thinking about themselves. So it's a fine line between being cocky and being self-aware.
I never talk about myself when I go into a new job. I let everyone tell me about themselves, and I listen. I'll tell you about myself if you ask me, but I go in with, I go in and I just want to learn about you, and I want to hear you talk, and people get very comfortable if you just let them ramble on about themselves. So I try to make myself, I also try to present myself when I go to set or when I go somewhere with someone on like a blank sheet of paper. I'm not the center of attention. I'm here to make you feel like the center of attention. So I try to be very selfless and put myself aside. And that's another thing. It's taken me a really long time to realize, just be quiet. Just listen.
Well, yeah, I think that everyone had the sort of perception of humility that it's sort of what I'm saying. Building a personal brand, I don't think requires a level of arrogance. By the way, I also think a lot of arrogant people have success building brands, and there is an advantage to not caring what people think.
I think you could be arrogant, but you don't have to let everybody know.
Oh, totally.
I mean, I know I'm good when I get there.
True.
But I'm not going to tell you until I get there and show you that I'm good.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying too that there is a path. Humility is truth. I mean, I think so. I think talking about your identity and your mission and clinging to that and not getting, trading yourself like a stock where if you have a good day, you're 50% better person. If you have a bad day, you're 50% worse. I think if you have a more stable guiding on a ship and remain curious, and I totally agree. I think the same human dynamics play out on social media. They're just amplified. So I think if someone's obnoxious and arrogant, they won't do well. Now, I do think it rewards it a little bit because it's an attention economy and extreme stuff sells, and the Paul brothers are like our, I don't think they'll be nominated for the Humility Nobel Prize Award. But I do think, I think clinging to your mission and just being honest about who you are is not an egotistical move.
I think a lot of it is just understanding your strengths and understanding your weaknesses. And sometimes you kind of have to fake it till you make it to get a career started and to get a brand launched. I mean, that's just how we work right now. But once you have a portfolio of work and work experience, that should speak for itself. And a thing that, I think is really important just in this day and age of, the socials and, online presence and ability to, quickly show someone, it's that elevator pitch. Well, what is an elevator pitch right now as a creative? Is it sharing something, communicating something, or is it showing them some sort of very fascinating 5-second sizzler on your phone? I think there's a lot of mediums at which you can, present your personal brand, and it's just depending on what you're selling, what you're putting out into the world, and what your value is.
So value is an important part of it. Knowing your values, knowing your mission, and being true to it.
Oh yeah.
Trusting yourself.
Trusting yourself. That's a good one. I think that's probably a good place for us to end. I think we have 1 minute left. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Any of you have books that you want to plug while we're up here? All right, I gave you a chance.
You can follow me on Instagram.
Yeah. All right. Nice to meet you. Are you heading back to Germany?
Monday.